Welcome to Paranormal M, where each story promises a journey into the unknown. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss out on our latest supernatural episodes. Enjoy the thrill of the eerie, surprised by a little boy spirit. When I was 17 years old, I decided to move up north from the Key Peninsula located by Gig Harbor, Washington, to a quaint little seaside town called Anna Cortez. It was a picture-perfect little town, just about 30 blocks sort of long, kind of like Ocean Shore's vibe in comparison. Anyhow, I was just invited to move up there with my boyfriend and his older brother, who was an MP in the nearby military base. As I arrived, I took a left on 7th Avenue looking for the address on my right in this beautiful neighborhood. I finally came to a stop in front of this spooky little house. Just my luck. All this beauty and I get the one creepy house. As I started to move my things and unpack, I had a very uneasy feeling. It was like I was being watched and Oliver just creeped out. As the days went by, I noticed the house was slanted. You could literally put a marble in the kitchen and it would roll the back of the house. So I started asking my boyfriend questions about the place. He explained that it was built in the early 1900s. That explained the extremely old giant oil heater in the living room. It constantly gave me weird vibes as well as in the backyard. Like there was this peculiar garden. It had beautiful flowers, but it was round and had 3 different levels to it, which was odd. A couple weeks had gone by and I was working graveyard shift at a local Safeway. That meant that I would be home pretty much all day by myself, because the rest of the household worked normal, daytime hours. One day, shortly after I'd gotten home at 10 a.m., I decided to lie down and take a nap and get some rest. At some point, I was awoken to the sound of metal tapping. Then I heard a male's voice very quietly saying something I just couldn't quite make out. I assumed that, my boyfriend had gotten home early and I was hearing him talking. Maybe he was just approaching the front door while jingling his keys. So I stood up in a bed and headed to my bedroom and hung a left to arrive at the front door. And by the way, I quickly opened with, excitement, assuming my boyfriend had finally gotten off early to my surprise. No one was there. I looked left, looked right, find no one. So disappointed and confused, I slammed the door, extremely disappointed, and as I turned around, there on top of that creepy oil heater sat a little boy looked about 6. Had blonde hair and fair skin. I was in complete shock and I could hardly believe what I was looking at. It felt like I stood like a statue. He was just sitting there swinging his legs and giggling, looking surprisingly happy. I turned back around and ran out my front door so fast I didn't even care that I was barefoot. I continued to run all the way to Domino's Pizza where my boyfriend was working. He pulled up from a delivery with a very confused look on his face. "Is everything okay? What are you doing here?" he asked. I sat him down, started to tell him what I heard, what I thought, and what I saw. He was amazingly not seeming to freak out or be surprised by what I just told him. And come to find out the reason why was a year before we moved in there had been a pond in the backyard. A 6-year-old boy lived in the house with his parents. One day, the boy decided to go look at the fish in the pond by himself. Got a little too close, fell into the deepest point in the middle. By the time his parents noticed, the back door was not latched shut as well as their son wasn't anywhere to be found. The frantic parents ran out of the back door, across the deck, across the yard of the pond to see their son's lifeless body floating in the pond. I was like, why did you never tell me this? Said that he didn't want to freak me out, but also from that day forward they drained the pond and put the house up for rent. But they explained to anybody who rents that the drained pond is now a garden, and they'd like flowers to be planted in it for remembrance. Suddenly everything came together and it all made sense. And needless to say, shortly after this experience, I moved things. And they were just too damn creepy. Ask Reddit. When I was younger, I used to have extreme paranoia. I had panic and anxiety attacks very easily. Well, it was due to the fact that I have a panic disorder that most others in my family also have. But my family didn't know, or my distant family. So one day, it was sort of one of my first sleepovers with somebody who wasn't my grandma or at my house. But anyway, I had a sleepover at my cousin's friend's farm. And it was supposedly, you guessed it, haunted. An old couple had built a farm there, had animals, and when one of them had died, the others moved, leaving the animals. So it was a lot like other basic horror movies, assuming that's why nobody believed me. At this sleepover, there was also a party, like with the parents. They had alcohol, and I can't remember the name, but they were kind of like go-karts. It was late at night, and some of the older kids there wanted to go check out the quote-unquote haunted barn. And like the little kid me and my cousin were, we said we'd go. Along with a few others, we went to the barn. There was gravestones, about 5 to 7 of them. There's I guess they're from old dogs that had died. The old couple once had them. Along with some donkeys that my cousin's friends now, sort of took care of. Now the barn wasn't run down, but it was visibly old. Just not falling apart, and there was a small balcony. Keep the balcony in mind. Anyway, the older kids went upstairs while I and my cousin stayed downstairs to the barn, obviously scared. The older kids in the end ran back downstairs screaming, one crying, saying the upstairs room had changed. Things moved, and something upstairs moved while they were up there. Like the scared people we were, we just ran away. About halfway back to the house, I looked back along with a few others. That was because one said that they saw something on the little old balcony on the second floor. There was something there. It wasn't there before. And that night we didn't even sleep. We heard banging from upstairs of the house and on the doors downstairs. Some doors would randomly fly open every now and then. And eventually we all passed out. The next day we all looked back at the barn and nothing was there. We still don't know what it was. I thought I was losing my mind. Almost a year ago, my boyfriend's grandma passed away in the living room. She was old and just ready to go. After her passing, some extremely weird stuff started happening. I am a skeptic. I don't know what to believe, but I know I did witness this shit. She was connected to oxygen, so when she died, I still had those massive oxygen tanks that weigh as much as me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to them slamming all over the house. And not just being knocked over. One of them had flown across the room and put a hole in the wall. It was loud. I thought somebody had broken into her house and was destroying it. I had no clue until I got up and found the oxygen tanks all over the place. This went on for weeks when it had never happened before she died. Then our appliances started turning on in the middle of the night. Like our paper shredder, for example, which was loud as shit. I was losing sleep, and I felt like I was losing my mind. The thing that sent me over the edge is that I was sitting on the floor in the living room in front of the very place that she died, the couch. I was eating and felt somebody pull my hair. I called a preacher and had my house prayed over by multiple people. Then I just stayed at my job, just to kind of get out of my house. I was too tired to even think about anything when I got home from work. Haven't heard or seen anything other than, tonight I was sitting in my living room again and I heard "help me." So I'm currently hiding underneath my blankets. Maybe I need to pray again. My thing is, I don't think it's Grandma. I knew her very well. She wouldn't be yanking on my hair asking for help or throwing her oxygen tank across the room. We got rid of those, so there wouldn't be any more holes in the walls. I personally think her death either opened something up or left enough energy to attract other things. moved into a home owned by only one person who passed away at 99. She lived here with her husband and son. It's a very beautiful 1950s home that's all original aside from some appliances. And, well, my husband and I live pretty similar lives socially to the woman. We go to the same church and are sending our son to the same school by chance. The house comes with an original vacuum system. I've been vacuuming every morning, learned from neighbors that she did the same. So I assumed if there was a spirit, it would be happy. Been seeing things out of the corner of my eyes often. I've had a door or two shut. I've also heard the washing machine running when it's not. Most noticeably, today our family crest came off the wall and was found very far away and adjacent to where it was hung with the nail still sturdy in the wall. The hook was still affixed to the back of the crest. It's never broken before either, and this time it's a piece broke off on soft linoleum flooring with a shag rug. I heard it fall, and it was just quite loud, really, like a slam. We've recently had some tension in our home due to drama with our in-laws, but we are genuinely quiet and happy people. Nothing too intense has happened in the house, no fighting or yelling. Just us being overall tense and stressed. I guess maybe she doesn't like that. What was I chased by? So this happened about 8 months ago. I was in Miller Park in Columbus, Ohio, a very small park. It's about 10 p.m. and my friend and I were sitting on the playground. About 20 or 30 feet from the playground is a small ravine that runs through the park. It has lots of trees around, so it's hard to see into. First, we heard a single scream for help coming from the ravine. It sounded like an adult man. His voice broke like he was in pain, but it cut off very abruptly at the end of the word. There was no second scream. My friend and I paused to look at each other before he turned to me and said, "We should run." We did. Once I got off the playground equipment, I heard footsteps coming from the ravine. As I was running behind my friend, I heard footsteps chasing me very close behind. My friend said that she heard them too, my footsteps and another pair. I kept looking back and I saw nothing, even though it sounded very close. My friend got very far ahead because of my asthma, so she turned around to wait for me. Got to my car, called the police because we were worried it was like sex trafficking tactic or someone was in trouble. But the more we talked about it later that night, the stranger it seemed. When I heard the scream, I listened for a sound of struggle since it cut off so suddenly. There's lots of dry branches and a river in the ravine, and I heard no twigs snapping or water splashing. And the scream was very clear and close by. So why wouldn't they call out again? There was a street lamp, so I should have seen it while I looked back and I was running. I still heard the footsteps very clearly when my friend was waiting for me. She said she saw nothing behind me. That ravine has always given my friends and I a very unsettling feeling. I'm wondering what it could have been, and why it stopped chasing me after I left the playground barrier, and why it didn't catch me because I was very slow. And why a supernatural creature would be in a small park surrounded by houses? Fair question. Haunted by lights. This was when I was around 4, so I'm not mad if everybody explains it by typical toddler imagination. But I don't think that's what it was. I myself am a believer, yet skeptical, so I thought of many different explanations. Can't shake the feeling that what I saw that night was real. Now, to the event that took place. Like I said, I was very young at the time, but already had my own room and bed. My mom tugged me in as usual. I'm sure they meant tucked, not tugged. It was also already dark outside with the sun completely gone. Anyways, I can't remember if I couldn't sleep or woke up, but at some point during the night I woke up to turn around. I always slept facing the wall directly next to my bed, so The rest of my room was facing my back. I turned around to get a view over in my room when I saw a light on my wall. It was bright, warm white and shaped like an eye. Perfectly eye-shaped, as if somebody drew it onto the wall. There's no pupil and iris, just a glowing eye shape. Young me didn't think anything of it and just watched it, so I noticed that it would blink. The light would vanish for a second and then come back periodically, just like a normal person blinking. It wasn't me blinking, because I could still see the room normally. I got scared and ran to my mom and woke her up. She, too, saw the eye. Turned on the ceiling light, which made the eye disappear. Obviously, because now the whole room was bright. We started searching for a source of the weird eye-shaped light, but couldn't find anything. I forgot to mention that at the time, we lived in an apartment complex on the 6th floor, so there's no way somebody in front of the window could have caused it. When we couldn't find anything that could cause the eye to appear, and eventually my mom turned the light back off and told me to just, face the wall and try to sleep, since my eye was still there. At some point, it just disappeared, and I've never seen such a thing again. I asked my mom about the incident. She doesn't seem to remember. Sometimes she just tells me it must have been a dream. I do have vivid dreams, but never one that felt so real. I also try to look up if anybody else has ever experienced something like it. No results so far. Does anybody here have an idea, an explanation, or a similar thing? I'm in my 20s now, and it still bothers me a lot because I just can't figure out what it might have been. I've had other strange things happen, especially involving light. Something just pretended to be me. This was my bedroom. My mom's in the living room with the lights off. This happened around 8:30 p.m. It's now past 10. My mom heard quote-unquote me come down the hallway into the kitchen. She asked if I was okay, and she apparently heard a mumbling, sort of a noise back. It was in my voice. She said that she didn't know what I said, and after that, the kitchen lit up as if I was using my phone flashlight to find something. Then it was just gone. After that, she texted me and asked if I'd been out in the living room. Got up, left my room to talk to her, and tell her that I hadn't. I'd been in my room working on a project for the last few hours. So now we're both freaked out. She kept asking if I was messing with her, and I swore I wasn't. We've been experiencing a few things here and there, like strange noises and things moving around. My dad also had a few of his own experiences. I think one was also about me, so whatever it is, it keeps impersonating me. I'm not sure if it's entirely related, but for the past year or so I've been feeling this very off energy around me. I've been able to see ghosts. I've been able to feel them, their energies and all this. But this one is just off. The only way I can describe it is just wrong. It's very inconsistent from when it shows up. Sometimes it's gone for a week and comes back, or it's every other day. I also really only feel it in my room, and sometimes elsewhere in the house. It's usually at night. Not sure if they're related, and if they are, I'm not really sure how to get rid of this thing. Any advice? I don't believe in Christianity or anything, so I wouldn't feel comfortable getting the house blessed or anything. Even if you're uncomfortable, why not give it a shot? Old experience, but still scary. I came across a video that wanted people to comment their scariest paranormal experience. The one that came to my mind was from when I was about 6 or 7, I think. My mom, sister, and I were spending the night at my Nana's. We were all sleeping in the living room. My sister was on a rollaway bed, Mom's on a big couch, and I was on a love seat across from my mom. The big couch was sort of right in front of the hallway to the 2 bedrooms and the bathroom. I woke up in the middle of the night to my mom raised up, leaning on her arm, looking down the hallway. I asked her what she was doing. No response. She didn't even look at me. I said Mom a few times until she just turned to look at me, but it really wasn't my mom. Whatever or whoever looked at me It had glowing red eyes. They just stared at me until I finally pulled my blanket over my head and went back to sleep. I asked my mom the next morning why she was looking down the hallway last night. She said that she didn't. I didn't mention the glowing eyes to her because I was still scared. But when she had no memory of looking down the hall, it made me really nervous for some reason. Even now, 20 plus years later, I can still picture the exact scene in my head. That wasn't the only paranormal experience I had in the house or even on that land. We shared about 7 acres with my Nana. After a really, really bad flood, I found a headstone next to my Nana's house. The experiences with my mom was around the same time I found it. But I know it wasn't who the gravestone belonged to, because I saw the ghost of the little girl just found her headstone. She was born in the 1800s. Can't remember the year that she was born, but she died in 1899. Her name was Elizabeth. So I'm wondering if the flood could have stirred something evil up, since it stirred up her headstone. Not all the spirits are bad. There's Elizabeth and my pawpaw, who not only passed in the house, unexpected heart attack before he was going to use the bathroom. We also spread his ashes in the land like he had asked. One of them saved me from falling down the stairs when I was about maybe 16. I even had scratches from where I was grabbed. No pictures, unfortunately. Did have one, but it was a long time ago. No one had lived in my Nana's house prior to them. They built it in 1965, so besides my pawpaw, any spirit, came with the land. I think a mimic is trying to trick me. Over the last year, my sister and I have been experiencing some strange things. Nothing malevolent or dangerous, but just odd stuff. Sometimes we think we hear our parents' voices from other rooms, only to find out that they aren't in the room or even in the house at all. Sometimes we think we hear odd, high-pitched whistling noises. It seems to be worse in autumn, but it does seem to happen in summer too. Like I said, we've not experienced anything truly malevolent or dangerous, but it's unsettling enough to not really feel like it's something we can ignore. Anyway, I don't really know much about mimics or paranormal, entities that mimic voices. I was just wondering if anyone with more knowledge on this stuff had anything to say. Thanks in advance. I really love this place. Unexplained shadow person in front of me. Maybe somebody had a similar experience in the past. I live in a country in Eastern Europe. When I was about 15 years old, I was a smoker. And always had to hide from, patents or parents or relatives when I wanted to smoke one. They didn't approve. I lived in an apartment building maybe 10 or 15 feet from the medieval historic fortress, which was built during the Hungarian king Ladislaus I, 1077 to 1095, if I'm saying that right. The fortress is the city's emblematic symbol and a historical masterpiece. So as usual in the evening around 6 or 7 p.m. summertime, I would enter the fortress yard, climb a very small hill and sit on the ground enjoying my tobacco. One evening as I went to have a smoke in this place, I see from far away a person entering the fortress yard. This isn't unusual. A lot of people visit the fortress. I didn't mind. And P.S. there's nobody else there at the time in the fortress yard besides me and the person who just entered. I continued to smoke and watch this tall person as he's slowly walking in my direction. He's wearing all black clothes and a black hat. I think to myself that this person is a little bit strange looking. But again, I don't mind. I was just there enjoying nature and my smoke. The creepy part that gives me chills to this day is this. So this person was slowly walking toward me and didn't change direction. This is about maybe a 3-minute walk from the entrance to the place where I was sitting. And as he got closer, I could see that this thing or person had no face, no eyes, no face profile. It was all black. It looked like a complete black shadow shaped like a human. I completely froze, and I think to myself, it must be crazy, or maybe I'm not seeing well. But this thing kept getting closer to me. When it got in front of me, it literally entered the ground. Yes, it entered the ground like a shadow. In 1 second, it disappeared. I was so fucking scared, I almost fainted. I was so scared to even get up and run to the exit on the same path as this thing. I tried calling several of my friends so I could talk to somebody, not feel alone as I'm exiting the yard, and all of them had their phone dead or without service. It was all very strange. I tried calling 7 people, and all 7 were out of reach. Had no signal, or the phone was dead. I finally find the courage to get up and run as fast as I could while trying to phone people and not looking back. The second I exit the yard, I could call all my friends as they all had service and signal again. I want to mention that my phone had full service and signal the entire time. This was the last time I went to the fortress. I'm 26 now. I still can't figure out just what the hell was that thing. Never encountered something like that since. It only happened once in my life. Do you guys have any ideas what that could have been? Did I see a ghost today? Today was a relatively normal day for me. Parked my car before 10 in a full underground parking lot. Went to meet my friend at a coffee shop. I was going to walk back outside through the entrance or exit for cars, but I found the stairway to upstairs and decided to take the stairs instead. I've had experiences with ghosts before. I've had experiences with homeless people who weren't entirely mentally present. The defining factor was how my body reacts between the two. With my more frightening spiritual experiences, my body gets cold. All my hair stands, and I suddenly feel intense fear and a gut instinct that screams at me to run before I can think anything. My reaction to the latter have been some nervousness, mainly calm. Some might even say that's the opposite of nervousness. If somebody's caught me off guard, I'll flinch, but I recover quickly. Growing up downtown and working in a hospital where I see all types of people, I can quickly gauge or estimate what type of state a person is in front of me. As soon as I entered the stairway door, immediately on the stairs next to me, I see somebody hunched over on the stairs, knees and hands on the steps. Honestly, I thought it may have been a homeless person or maybe a mentally ill person, perhaps like having a moment. So I almost turned around to leave. I stopped and looked a second longer. She seemed normal. It was a woman wearing a white summer dress. It was clean and she had dark hair that was long and covered her face. And I thought, okay, she seemed like an ordinary lady. Maybe they just fell on the steps, but she wasn't really, trying to get up. She just stayed in that position. It looked like she was moving to get up, but she wasn't actually getting up. Just kind of swaying very slightly back and forth. Knees and hands on the steps, like a crawling stance. Personally, to me, that's a very uncomfortable position. And I truly believe any normal person would at least roll over and sit and take a moment or lie in the steps. Especially if you just want to process your fall like that. Everything was somewhat, normal until I asked her, "Are you alright?" And suddenly in that exact moment, this cold, intense shock of fear struck through my whole body, telling me to run. She responded in the most eerie, grotesque hiss. "Yes!" She slowly turned her head, but kept it facing down. Hell no, I turned around, bolted through those doors, and I sprinted outside of that coffee shop. Nothing has sent me like that. What's happening to me? About a month ago, I started hearing a weird sound in my bedroom. I have it on video, but I don't know how to add a recording to this post. Maybe somebody could help me. But it's basically a really loud, digital-sounding lullaby or children's song. similar to what would be played by like an ice cream truck or a kid's toy. For about a week, I kept hearing the sound at random times throughout the day, always come from my bedroom, play for maybe 30 seconds. I kept trying to track it down, but the sound seemed to be coming from every direction. I searched very thoroughly, and I couldn't find anything in my room that would make a sound like that. And by the way, while I was in the middle of telling my mom about it, it started playing upstairs, and we both heard it. I was pretty freaked out just because of how creepy the situation was, but realistically, just thought it was probably an old toy. Maybe it's just something else hidden in my room. Eventually, the sound stopped occurring, and I forgot about it. Last night, I'm at my friend's house with a few people watching Love Island when all of a sudden the sound started playing. I hadn't heard it for a few weeks until yesterday. I started freaking out when my friends knew about the weird sounds I was hearing. We all went looking for the source. Couldn't find it anywhere. Both agreed it sounded like it was coming from everywhere. Now I'm honestly terrified. The only item in common between my room and my friend's house last night was my purse. Emptied it out, and there's absolutely nothing in there capable of making it sound like that. There's just no explanation I can think about, like how this could have happened. If anybody has had a similar situation or knows what might be going on, please let me know. If I start hearing the sound in my room again, I'm actually going to flip. Is my cat protecting me from ghost? I'm a 29-year-old female, and since as long as I can remember, I can feel spirits. I have and will always fight my, gift. I see it's the worst thing that can happen to me. I'm sensitive to spirits or ghost. Honestly, this whole thing's always scared the shit out of me. I have no interest in developing my quote-unquote gift. The best way I can describe it is energy. Living and dead, but the dead stronger. I can feel how many spirits, negative or positive. Sometimes I can tell you how someone died. To me, it's like walking to a library and all these books want to open themselves to me and I have to force them closed. The first ghost I saw was in my old aunt's house. Must have been around 7. Walked right past me into the bathroom. I was scared. Couldn't believe it. There's tons of situations I can mention, so I'm only going to name about a few of them. I think it got worse around when I was in high school. I volunteered at a hospital trying to build a good resume for scholarships. I would talk to a patient or read them books, get them water, little things. Once I walked past her room and I felt it. The energy was so strong. I knew the person there was passing. Remember the nurse pushing me aside because the patient was coding. The only thing I could say is, it's too late, they're already gone. They passed. But since that day, more and more ghosts followed me. It's as if they realized I could sense them. Some of them would touch me, pull my hair, some of them would close doors on me. There's 2 energies, ghosts, sorry, I call them energies, that would walk and make noise in the attic. We have a 1-story home. Anything to get my attention, I ignored every single one of them. I'd cry myself to sleep because I thought I was going insane. I just kept getting worse one time when I came home from school and the radio was on. But it was odd because nobody was home. I would find out the radio wasn't plugged in and didn't even have batteries. That time I did say out loud, "Stop, leave me alone, I will not help you." Someone listened, some didn't. Another huge event was my aunt was murdered. I felt her pass. I saw her at the funeral. She was there and my cousin, her son, told the family what happened. She was here for about 6 months to a year after her passing. She knew I could see her. At first, she was so overwhelmed and in panic, and I didn't know how to help her. I would just talk to her. It's funny because now she knows I don't want any part of this ghost feeling energy stuff. I smell French vanilla, which happens to be her favorite, not mine. I know it's her. She's gone. She's passed. but she checks up wanting information on her children, which brings me to my point. Never been a cat person until 2 years ago. I got my cat Poppy. I lived on my own, and yeah, I can still feel spirits, but since Poppy's been in my life, it's like she controls who can come into my house ghost-wise. She started looking and chasing at walls. She'll always stay by my head if it's in, well, almost like it's in constant protector mode. For the first time in my life, I can breathe, not scared. I can feel Poppy's energy even when I'm not home. However, if I spend more than 2 days away from Poppy, I start to feel the energies again. Am I crazy? Can someone explain this? Poppy seems like good people to me. Too many coincidences throughout my life. These 2 events I'm about to tell could just be coincidences, of course. But they, along with many other minor things, always bothered me. It's because they were too specific to be just a coincidence. And I can't think of an earthly explanation for them besides this. Some years ago on the internet was something distant. I woke up too early one day. Couldn't sleep anymore. At that time, there were these educational courses on TV that I watched rarely. They were played in a random order. Before every episode, somebody would say what course, what it was, and the number of the episode. Something like Mathematics, Class 47, or History, Class 58. There's an episode still running when I turned on the TV, and as I had nothing else to do, I decided to watch it. It finished another class of a different course was about to begin. I know it was a different one because the intro animation was about math, but the previous episode was about something else. I said just out of boredom that it was going to be the 47th episode. When the intro finished, the teacher said it was the 47th. It entertained me. I thought it was just a funny coincidence. But when the next class came, I said another number again, 58. And it too was correct, but this time when the teacher said it, I got the shivers all over my body. It felt really weird. The second one happened at school. I was in my last year of high school, and there was this new teacher that we all liked because he was funny and entertaining. I'm going to call him E. And I'm going to call him Ed. During another class with another teacher, I'm going to call him L. And I'm going to call him Larry. We already knew and liked for many years, and we were just chatting, students and teacher. And Larry was telling some of his stories. He began to tell something that one friend told to him. His friend was teaching in another school. He didn't care to mark every student that was present, and by the end of the year came, got in trouble because the student that died a whole semester before was marked as present through the whole year. Then he proceeded to tell other stuff. I don't know how, but when he told that, the only thing I could think of is that it must have been Ed who did it. I was so sure. It felt like it was the absolute truth. There wasn't anything to back this up. I'd never seen the two of them interacting before this. When the class ended, I gathered my friends and just told them. Guys, I think that teacher who Larry told us, I think he told us about is Ed. They asked me why, and I didn't know what to answer. They kind of got mad telling me that made no sense at all. The argument kind of got long until Ed came to just began the class, and the classmates started talking to him about this, but no one could explain it properly. So I told Ed the story about the dead girl. Just because at that point my friends made me feel like I was being silly for thinking that. But Ed listened to it silently and seriously. And when I finished telling him, he just said, sort of a kind of angry tone, I know that story. This teacher was I. I could tell he was mad because the other teacher, well, guess they didn't get along so well, and the other teacher told the other teacher about this, and then told us. My friends kept being mad at me, asking how I knew it, telling me that it didn't make sense to just know it out of nowhere. The Little Girl in the Wicker Chair. This is one of my mom's many creepy paranormal encounters that creeps me out to this day. When I was little, we rented the top floor of a house. Another family rented the bottom half. My mom told me that she woke up one night to grab a drink from the kitchen. She was walking out of her room and glanced into the living room. Diagonal to her, she froze when she saw a little girl, about 10 years old. She was wearing an older style nightgown and she was sitting in a large wicker chair. How she described it is the part that really freaked me out the most. She said the girl had a flat expression. She was looking straight ahead, but only had her eyes looking at my mom. So her eyes were strained to stare at my mom in that angle. It scared her because it almost came off as if she was disturbing her and the girl was clearly not happy. Needless to say, my mom turned around, went right back into her room and had minimal sleep. I do want to make a note that my mom had come back from a surgery the day prior. I'm basically on painkillers, so who really knows? The only thing is that after this happened, my mom told the downstairs neighbor what she saw. The neighbor told her that in the house around the 60s, a little girl had fallen out of the second-story window where the living room was. That's where she saw the girl. Cracked her head open and sadly passed away. They could have possibly been pulling her leg. Kind of sick thing to make up if they were bullshitting her. Yeah. Never found anything on it, and when I tried to research it, other stuff did happen in that house. I remember always being scared that there's this dangling on my stomach out of the attic window. What? My mom yanked me in and started yelling out of fear. Probably not related, but who knows? Certainly not I. Rubber ball. A few years ago, when I was a young adult, I had a strange experience at my cousin's house. We were outside near an old metal gate of his house, playing with rackets and a beach tennis ball. You know, those rubber ones that barely bounce. The gate is massive and rarely opened. Usually you enter the house through a small door and an adjacent path. This path leads through 2 gardens to the entrance of the house. That's on the first floor after a small set of stairs. That day the whole family was inside upstairs. Nobody was outside. So we were playing, hitting the ball back and forth when one of us hit it a bit too hard. The ball flew over the gate and landed in the tall grass on the other side. Found ourselves facing a dilemma. Who was going to walk around, take a small door, and cross the garden to retrieve the ball? We were debating this, still standing near the big gate, when suddenly, the ball came back on its own. It was as if somebody had thrown it back over the gate. Well, surprised, I looked at my cousin and asked, "What the heck? Why did the ball come back?" He nervously laughed and said, "I don't know, but the last time I was here and threw some geranium flowers over the gate, they kept coming back too." That's when I said, "All right, let's get inside right now." We quickly went inside and asked the family members who were quietly having tea upstairs. We asked if anybody had gone down to the garden. Of course, nobody had. To this day, this story remains a complete mystery to me. The ball was rubber and it couldn't have bounced on its own in that tall grass. And yet it took enough time to come back that we had time to approach the gate, discuss who would go get it, and convince ourselves that no one was there. Growing up in a haunted house. From my earliest memory up to the age of 20, my family and I lived in a house that we swear is haunted. My sisters and I all have stories about encountering ghosts. I'm sure that our parents had such stories too, but sadly they're no longer with us to share them. Figured that I would at least share some of mine. Story 1. 3 Ghosts in the Window. This happened when I was pretty young. I think maybe 8, if I had to guess. I was downstairs in the basement playing with my Hot Wheels in the rec room. The first thing to know about that basement is every time I would walk down the stairs, I would always get this eerie feeling that I was being watched. I'm not the only one who feels that way. My sister and later my eldest nephew, we all noticed it. Anyway, this particular day, it was late afternoon, early evening in the summer. The sun was low in the sky, sunlight streamed in through the basement windows. That looks out to the backyard. As I was playing, deliberately sitting on the patch of sunlight, just hitting the floor, I noticed the shadow of what I assumed was 3 people walking past the basement window. Being a curious child, I wondered who was in her backyard. Got up, went over to the basement door, which leads to the carport. Went into the backyard to take a look. My backyard was empty. Backyard's quite large, too. There's absolutely no way that anybody walked at a regular pace. Which those 3 shadows were. They weren't in a hurry. They couldn't walk all the way over to the opposite side of the house before I could get outside to see them. Even if they had started running right after passing the window or they had cast a shadow, I at least would have been able to see them just as they turned the corner. Creeped me the hell out. Story 2. The Squeaky Floor. This happened to me when I was about 12 to 13. First, I need to explain the house I grew up in. Floors on the main level squeaked terribly. Practically every square inch of the floor made a squeaking, creaking, or groaning sound when stepped on. What's more is, each area of the floor made a very distinct sound when stepped on. You could tell exactly where somebody was inside the house by the sound the floor made. Anyway, I was home alone this particular evening. I was sitting in the lazy boy armchair in the living room with one of the leaves on the dining room table across the armrest, using it as sort of a table to do my homework. As I was working, I heard the sound of somebody coming out of my parents' bedroom and began walking down the hall towards me. I stopped what I was doing, turned around, and looked down the hall to see who was there. The hallway was empty. The moment I turned to look down the hall, the sound stopped. I shrugged it off, went back to work. That's when minutes later the floor started squeaking again. Whatever was making the sound got right in front of the bathroom door. I turned to look again, the sound stopped. I sat there staring silently, daring the entity to continue making noise while I watched. Not a sound came down the hall. So I went back to doing my homework. A few minutes later, the squeaking began again. Waited for the sounds to reach the top of the stairs right in front of the kitchen door, and I turned around and stared again. Once again, the sound stopped. Turned back to my homework. A moment later, I heard the floor squeaking their way into the kitchen. It was at that point that I said, screw it. Set my homework aside, turned on the TV, and started watching Guns of Paradise, starring Lee Horsley. Story 3. Tea Time. This is a relatively short story, but a pretty creepy one. I like drinking tea. I drink a lot of tea. I far prefer drinking tea over drinking coffee. But anyway, one cold winter day I was sitting at home enjoying a cup of Earl Grey tea. I was watching the snow fall past the streetlights from the living room window. Suddenly I heard a really loud bang in the kitchen, as though somebody had slammed the cupboard door really hard. I jumped, spilled tea on my shirt. I got up, went into the kitchen to see what the racket was. The cupboard doors where we kept the coffee mugs and dishes were sitting partially open, as if somebody had slammed them really hard and they bounced back open. Here's the thing though. When I'd fixed my cup of tea, I'd left the cupboard doors closed. What's more, all of the windows in the kitchen were closed too. So the likelihood of it being the wind is virtually non-existent. The cupboard doors, they had opened themselves, slammed themselves shut with enough force to bounce back partially open, stay there. Creepy. Story 4. Just saying goodbye. This happened when I was 20. It was the night before I was moving away to go to my college. My mom, my best friend, and I were all standing around the living room just talking. Suddenly the TV turned on all by itself. It stayed on for maybe a minute, then shut itself off. I looked around and saw that the TV remote control was laying at the coffee table. Not even one of us was anywhere near close enough to have hit the power button. Deliberate or accidental. Just laughed and I said, "Well, I guess the ghost is saying goodbye in his own sort of way. I'll miss you too, Casper." I knew it was the ghost and not a glitch in the TV. The TV was too new to have glitches like that. Gotta tell you, doesn't matter if a TV is new. They can be brand new broken. I felt when my mom passed away. I live in the Caribbean. My parents live in Europe. Last March, my mom passed away. Stage 4 lung cancer. We're not religious, nor have I believed in some kind of higher power. The morning she passed, I woke up at 3 a.m., uneasy, nervous, trying to go back to sleep. I started playing with my phone, and around 6 a.m. I got up to get some coffee. While sitting in the darkened bed next to my husband, my phone rang. It was my sister. Before I picked up my phone, I knew she died. My dad found her at 11 a.m. The coroner told us that she passed at 8 a.m. in the morning. We had a 5-hour difference. I woke up the moment she died. Till this day, can't explain how, can't explain why. I'm in Europe now in her house. I was watching a series about mom with Alzheimer's. There's no implications that she was dying, and while I'm sitting watching TV, I remembered how a couple of months ago I used to fall asleep on this couch with her picture. I turned, looked into the kitchen, remembering her cooking, and thought about my therapist. She's telling me, "You still haven't mourned as you should." I go back to my series, and maybe 15 seconds, and I see the woman get up and check on her mom, and she died. Exactly the same way how my mom died. I keep getting these signals, or am I losing my mind? Coincidences? Has anybody experienced something like this? I wouldn't say it's losing your mind. The Ghost of 85B. This was more my dad's story than mine, but I think this needs to be shared. In August of '06, my family was stationed at Fort Riley in Kansas. We moved into this gorgeous duplex at the end of a horseshoe-shaped neighborhood. The house was built in the early 1900s and had an unfinished basement, with those sort of pole lights that only light up the small area around you. In the basement, there's also the smallest boot prints in the cement that look as if they belong to a child. Irrelevant, but still strange information. The house had the grand staircase that only went from the ground floor to the second floor, had a back staircase which went to all 4 floors. It was originally intended for servants. The ground floor held main living areas, and my brother and I were on the second. I snagged the master, which had its own doorbell. For a 6-year-old, this was awesome, but probably obnoxious, but probably pretty awesome. My parents stayed on the top floor, had an unfinished attic room that held pieces of original furniture. Babysitter once joked vampires lived in there. About a month after moving in, a woman knocked on the door, introduced herself as part of the Historical Society, asked for my family's permission for this home to be featured in the annual Halloween ghost tour, informing us that this is a usual stop. She let us know that this home was host to a spirit called the Buckskin Ghost, as he appears as a man in buckskin clothing. We informed her that we were new. We hadn't had any paranormal experiences. She asked how long we'd been there. My dad says, about a month, to which she replies, usually he shows himself by now. My dad politely declined to be on the tour. I think my parents either didn't believe or were scared. I don't blame him. We were still unpacking things at this point, mostly boxes that were in the garage, which were all attached to the back stairwell near the basement. Dad noticed a light in the garage was out and went to come change it. Completely normal thing. As my dad's reaching up to change the light, it comes back on. He makes sure it screws all the way and climbs down the ladder, puts it away. When he returns to the garage, the light's out. Confused, my dad fetched the ladder again. He returns, the light's back on, frustrated, he moves the ladder out of the way. Light goes off. So, he sets up the ladder, climbs up, and he's reaching up to change the light and comes back on. My dad is beyond frustrated now and yells, "Stop fucking with me!" Light comes back on. Doesn't go out the entire time we lived there. This was our introduction to the next 10 months. Other odd things happened in the home, like the radio turning to a static station extremely loudly. Then there were rooms in the basement our dog wouldn't go into. Anytime anything would happen, we would refer to Bucky acting up. While we lived there, we learned more about the base's haunted history. We even purchased a book of the ghost stories, which included our home. This book also featured a story of a little girl who befriended a ghost and played dolls with them. When that family moved out, the girl left her doll in the house for her quote-unquote friend. Remember the original furniture that was in the attic? When I first moved in, looked at all the drawers, and in one of those drawers was that doll. One I didn't learn anything about until months later. I don't know what happened to the doll, but I only saw it once. For the most part, nothing too terrifying happened in the house, though. Well, at least that was until my dad stayed by himself. My dad was a night pilot, meaning he usually slept during the day. One day, he woke up by the sound of heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. My dad got up, opened the door, and asked if anybody was there. Immediately, the noise stops. My dad went to check the window overlooking the street to see if a service van was at the house. For those who haven't lived on a military base, they occasionally send people to the home to do things like change air filters, things like that. My dad didn't see anything, went back to bed. He was again woken up by the sounds of heavy footsteps on what he perceived as the second floor. My dad shot out of bed, went to the door, and as soon as he opened the door, the noises stopped. He yells again, "Is anyone there?" No response. As he goes and lays back down, my dad then hears items of furniture moving in the room opposite the wall in front of the bed. The one with the original, furniture items. He jumps out of bed and leaves the house without a second thought. It wasn't until he was at work later that I realized he was going to be back to home alone. Questioned what was in the home with him. I was 6 when all this went down, and for years we've talked about these experiences and others that have happened there. We continued to check for more stories online about this house. Others have also experienced a friendly but mischievous ghost affectionately called Bucky. I've had other strange experiences throughout my life, and I believe this house is what opened me up to them. I'm now dating a man who's a skeptic. While visiting my home in Florida, my dad told him his story. The light in the kitchen was flickering throughout his retelling, and jokingly my boyfriend yells, "Stop fucking with me." That's when it flickers off. The light immediately turned on and continued to stay on while we visited. Don't believe me? Look up Ghost of 85B Schofield Circle, Fort Riley, Kansas. Plenty of stories from the base that deserve to be heard, including this one. And I encourage those that have made it this far to do some additional research on this haunted military base. And if you live in this house, please let Bucky's story be told on the ghost tour. You heard him. The one and only true experience that I've had. I've always been the person that's skeptical and overall doesn't believe in paranormal things. There's always a reason behind everything, but I have absolutely no idea who or what I saw. So 3 years ago I moved into my new house. I'd just finished moving everything in my new room in the basement. I'd already arranged my room. My mom also came down and set up hanging lights as a path for me to get into my room in the dark because the lights in the basement didn't work. And keep in mind, my room is quite big. It has no door frame for the entrance to my room, so you're sort of just able to see the basement and a bit of the stairs. I'm always able to hear when somebody's walking down the basement stairs. Anyway, I was just having a regular day like any other. I decided to start playing Shadow of War on my console after arranging my room. I had my setup on the left of the doorway. My headset was on and I was pretty focused on the game when suddenly out of nowhere, I had a feeling that someone was watching me. In my far peripheral vision in the corner of my eye, I could see someone peering in at me from the doorway with half their body leaned through, almost like it didn't want me to see it, and I could tell it didn't know that I was looking at it. But me being me, I thought it was just my little brother trying to sneak up on me like he always does. So I continued playing my game, making it look like I didn't know that he was there. Then suddenly I snapped my head in its direction as fast as I could. When I looked at it, it quickly moved backwards out of view. I was still sitting there waiting for my brother to come out and be like, "Ah, you got me." But I heard nothing. So I said in a playful tone, "I know you're there, I literally just saw you." Still heard nothing. I know he didn't run away because I didn't hear a single footstep on the stairs. I stood up from my chair and started stomping over the doorway. But before I could make it to the doorway, I heard a powerful gust of wind like somebody had just run past my room at full speed and said, "What the hell?" I quickly looked around outside my room and saw the light bulbs from the light on my path swinging like something had run past at full speed. I stood outside the door of my room confused because I didn't hear or see anyone run past when I stood up. The thing didn't even make a single sound, even when it moved out of the doorway. It didn't make any noise when it stepped out of my room. So I went upstairs to look for my little brother anyway. Saw that his room was empty and I said, "What?" Then I went to my mom and asked where my little brother is. She said that he went with his friends a little while ago, which baffled me because what had I just experienced? She said that nobody besides you went down there today, which made chills go down my spine because I literally saw what it looked like. Everything. It was nothing but a shadow, a cast of someone who used to be. Also, keep in mind this all happened in broad daylight. The sun was shining briefly through my windows. I still couldn't see a single feature that it had. I've never experienced anything paranormal in my life ever. I'm still questioning what I saw, and I need an explanation. I know that feeling. My encounter with something. Before encountering this thing, there is a succession of deaths. Started on 2020 in February. I lived in France. When I was at my friend's house, my grandmother, mother-related, died of pneumonia in a few days. I used to have 6 cats around me. My first pet passed away in 2021, January. Aggressive form of colon cancer. When detected by the veterinarian, she decided to remove the part, sending the part back for analysis. 2 days later, came back as the same level, and we had no choice at this point. Not even having the time to analyze the type of cancer. I'm going to shorten the details because it'd make a big post otherwise. Just want to warn that for any loss, I did everything with the veterinarian and I'm not looking at the cost to prevent them to die. My second pet died in 2021 in August. The vet found nothing. She was fine except she didn't want to eat anymore. In November in 2021, I learned my second grandmother has left due to cancer from the lungs, going to the brain. I was going each month to the vet during this time because another cat had a sort of virus in the mouth, found out she had kidney atrophies too. She passed away in March 2022. I had a few months after that until I discovered a breast cancer on my 4th pet the same year. I made this encounter in my bedroom before she also passed away too. That's in March 2023. During these years, I tried to stay alright because I had to keep going, but I was deeply saddened and powerless. Before my last cat died, her lungs were hit by cancer through her breast and had difficulties to breathe. I used to hold her on my chest in a way that she could breathe and sleep. I knew the vet couldn't change what will come. In a last hope, at night in my bedroom, I asked anything or anyone for help. My request was sincere and reasonable, and wanted just a few more weeks with her, and that she won't suffer. Something in the corner of the room appeared. It was tall and darker than the shadows. I didn't dare look directly at it, but from my left vision I could see it clearly. I had the feeling it was already there when I started to talk. It answered me with a heavy voice. His language was strange, and I couldn't link it to anything. Its phonetic had no vowels at all. It seemed impossible to speak to me, yet my mind made it like it said, "Heal the trees." It then vanished, and a kind of strong feeling of serenity dropped in the air, and I felt better, and my cat slept the rest of the night without me even coughing. Or rather, without the cat coughing. I kept in mind this experience, but I couldn't believe it. Also never paid attention to trees or how to take care of it. My cat couldn't deal with the cancer anymore. Died 3 weeks after this experience. The same strong serenity feeling came at the very end. Thought it was over, but my last 2 cats started the same severe ovary infections 5 days later. To me, it was clear something was not normal. A curse or something, I don't know. My house was clean, only vet and water from bottles, and food was clean with a pet-friendly soap. It pushed me to take this advice to heal the trees very seriously. And while I was watching all my trees, I figured out my old apple tree died. Haven't paid attention at all. Decided to cut it down and apply a product on my hornbeam. It was because of a hole that was weakening it. Things changed a lot after I'd done this. My last cat survived, and for months after all this, I tried to understand what was going on and what or who it was that night. I'm not sure I wasn't confused or not sleepy, until I heard a feminine voice behind me shudder, like an insisting whisper. I may be wrong, but I think she gave me her name, and the name of what I saw was called Kronos. And there's one other thing I experienced. July 2023. I added cameras. So during this summer, the camera at the back was showing my garden, but it wasn't totally the same state. Thought it was a bug from the camera, and I didn't pay attention. I just showed it to my sister and father, who saw the same thing. Garden turned wild. Vegetation was taking over the wall of the house. Watched it and ignored it, thinking the very next day this bug will come back again. But it didn't.